EAGLES, Eagles.
Hey, good morning, everyone, and welcome into this edition of Birds 365. It's our Football Thursday because there is no Football Friday and there's no Football Monday, so it is the end of our broadcast, our live broadcast here on Birds 365 for the week leading into the great celebration to live and be part of what it means to live in the great USA. Happy 4th of July to everyone. Be safe on the roads. Look for indicators always, and enjoy your family on what should be a long, beautiful holiday weekend. Johnny Mac, good morning to you, sir. How are you?
Good morning. Doing well. And I'd add stay hydrated. Going to be well over 100 locally, I think, today and tomorrow. So we have a lot of out of area listeners as well. You have a happy 4th as well. But for the local people, stay hydrated. And it is football. You know, you bring up celebration, family, everybody together. We're a football show, so I'm going to talk about football, but FUTBOL football. And the U.S. men's national team won last night. And it's just fun to see the country come together.
Yeah,
it's so polarized with everything. But everybody's on board with the U.S. men's national team who won last night, beat Bosnia, moves on to the round of 16. So they're the Sweet 16 already. Now, unfortunately, their best goal scorer is going to be suspended for the next game. So, but enjoy it while it lasts.
Yeah, and I think
it is a lot of fun.
And I think that next game is on Monday night, I think.
Monday night.
On Monday evening. And we'll get into some Eagles conversation. I thought we'd spend some time inside the world of John McMullen today. And
nobody wants that, Krause.
Well, we want to, as you get ready, the team and the players and the coaches and everybody are getting ready for training camp, and conversation will really start to heat up when we get on the other side of the holiday, and then you're whatever it is 20 days out before the players report, and then maybe it's what is it? I don't know. Maybe it's 21 days until the players hit the field for the first time. So I think we'll do some of that today and have some conversation, and also just continue some of the conversation that we've had over the last week. I did yesterday, John, go back, and I kind of wanted to relive a little bit of the 2025 season through what you remember on a week-to-week basis in terms of how that season, in terms of how the season played out. So I thought that would be an interesting thing to do. There's a lot of conversation about how bad the 2025 season, or disappointing, I guess is a better word than bad, how disappointing the 2025 season was. And I guess that's because of the early exit, in the playoffs. But in the very beginning of that season, I don't remember if it was pretty or not, but I know the Eagles coming out of that first month of football.
Yeah, they were 4-0.
They were 4-0. They were undefeated.
Yeah. And it wasn't pretty. You struggled against the Cowboys in the home opener. They kept it close, which Kansas City, you went on the road, you say that's a big win, but they were driving the football that Travis Kelce play with Drew Makuba picks it off. And you remember you're just a couple months off destroying that team in the Super Bowl. So then you had week 3 with the Rams, and the Rams completely outplayed. I think that was the first sign that the Eagles weren't quite as good. The Rams outplayed them, but they persevered. They managed to win the game on the first walk-off field goal block that I've ever seen. from Jordan Davis. So that's kind of a outlier. And then they won in Tampa where they had the dominant. I believe that was the game they had the dominant first half and then couldn't complete a pass in the second half, if I'm remembering correctly. So you had the one great half and the one poor half.
Well, stay right there for a minute, John, because, you know, and I'd love to get your thought on this. There's a lot of conversation about coming out of camp, how you approach camp. Are the starters supposed to play? The answer is always seems to be, a resounding no. And then all of a sudden, it's for real. And that first month of football, you certainly can't expect the team to be performing, at its highest point, or whatever would be its highest, or its lowest point. I guess perhaps the lowest point it could be. But hey, they were 4-0 coming out of the box, and they're going to have they have the same scenario every year. They're going to come into the first month of the season. They're going to have a new scheme. You're going to have a new offensive coordinator in the spotlight, on the big stage, in real time, calling plays and making decisions. And that's going to happen in real time again. So how prepared are you when you come out of camp? I don't know if you're as prepared as you can be. And I don't think, by the way, there's any way to shrink the curve. I'm just saying that's the way it looks or sounds to me when you think about it. I mean, is Sean Mannion really going to be able to install and get this offense in sync when the players get there at the end of July?
No, probably not certainly not early in the season. I mean, the adage is even when you have a veteran team and you're doing the same thing, like the Eagles changed coordinators last year, but they were basically doing the same thing. You still have that ramp up period in the regular season because, again, they collectively bargained a lot of practice out of the equation. And the Eagles, we talked about this yesterday or the day before, have made that cost-benefit analysis of, well, you can't prepare like you want to anyway, so you might as well get to week one as healthy as possible. And that's sort of how they approach things, and they're going to approach things that way with whether it's Kellen Moore, Kevin Patullo, Sean Mannion, or somebody else. They're going to approach it that way because that's an organizational decision. So there's a limited amount of time, and it doesn't stop. You don't stop preparing because it's week one. It's a constant evolution. And if everything works correctly, you've heard Nick Sirianni say probably 1,000 times, it's not about playing your best football at the start of the season. You want to play it at the end of the season. So the hope is you keep getting better and better, and that's what happened in 2024. And it kind of the opposite happened in 2025. It's amazing if you go through the season. So we took you through that 4-0 start. The first loss was against Denver, and they outplayed Denver. It was sort of the opposite of the Rams, and Denver stole the game late because they let them hang around a bunch of 50-50 balls back shoulder to Cortland Sutton. They go right down the field. They kind of steal the game. And it ended up, being a very disappointing loss. But at the time, nobody knew how good Denver was. Ultimately, they ended up, I think, being the best team in the AFC, would have been in the Super Bowl had Bo Nix not gotten hurt in the championship game, in my opinion. So they were a lot better, especially defensively, than people expected. And then you had the worst game of the season at the Giants on a Thursday night MetLife Stadium and they lose 34-17. And that was just an ugly game. That was just an ugly, ugly game. And sometimes you have that.
That was what, week 6? That was week 6.
Yeah. And
that was the game, John. That was a game that I'm just trying to look at the Jalen's numbers, in the first 6 games up to that Giants game, 19-23 in the Cowboys opener, 15-22, 21-32 for 226 in the Rams. As you said, on the Buccaneers.
Yeah, I think the disappointing part of that game actually was the defense, who gave up.
Yeah, gave up that many points.
Gave up that many points to a bad football team that had difficulty. They'd never seen Jackson Dart before. I know, he's got that dual threat ability. He was extending plays. They gave up 3 touchdowns, almost 100 yards. He had 98 yards from Cam Scatterbo, another rookie. Wan'Dale Robinson, you had the big missed tackle. That was the bad Drew Makuba game where Vic Fangio just went nuts on Drew Makuba, who missed the tackle on Wan'Dale Robinson, and it ended up being a long touchdown. And he blew a couple coverages. And, sometimes those games happen and you generally lose that type of game. Every team, unless you're really, really, really dominant and you don't lose any, or you lose 1 or 2, has that type of performance. And I think that was the worst game of the season. Just, if you take everything game by game, but they responded. The next week was Minnesota, which was the game everybody refers to when they're talking about moving to playing more under center. And Jalen Hurts had the perfect passer rating. Then they had the rematch of against the Giants, and they boat raced them. They destroyed them. And Jalen Hurts had 140 passer rating in that game as well. Then the bye week comes. So you're 6-2 at the bye week. And then I think people forget. Now, it was ugly offensively, but they won at Green Bay. And they beat Detroit here. Those were 10-7, 16. So you see the problems with the offense, but they're 8-2.
Yeah, I mean,
then the wheels come off. They lose 3 straight. That's when now it is very difficult to beat Dallas in AT&T Stadium, and the Eagles have had a lot of problems down there. A lot of people have problems down there. And Dallas was a better team last year than people give them credit for. It was still a field goal game. It was 24-21. The Chicago game, I call that the Jalen Carter game. They got completely blown off the ball. Jalen Carter's shoulders were acting up. The Chicago offensive line was dominant. They just completely, one of the few times you saw the Eagles out physical. The Bears just beat them up. So that was concerning. And after that game, the Eagles shut down Jalen Carter for basically a month because he couldn't lift weights. But, and that's why he was getting pushed around. And in that game, Chicago has the dual-headed rushing attack with our old friend DeAndre Swift and Kyle Monangai. Monangai had 130 yards at 5.9 yards per carry. Swift had 125 at 6.9 yards per carry. They were getting blown off the ball up front. But, they held Caleb Williams. He completed 17 of 36 passes for 154 yards. His passer rating was 56.9. So they didn't do a bad job from that perspective. But that was an ugly game.
I mean, it does show you, John. And what's the description or the phrase that you always reference for an individual game? Is it the personality? Do you refer to it as the personality of the game, or
every game's got a personality, and the personality of that game was they got the what kicked out of them.
Yeah, but at that point, even it's easy to look at. It's much easier to look back at it now, but in the moment, John, and you can go back to the Giants game. In that moment, when that bad loss played out, what was the mood in the locker room? What was was it next up? Was it panic? Was it what was it? Because they then turned on and went on, as you said, strung together a couple more good wins, including that Minnesota game. So when you're coming out of that game, you flush it and you move on to what is the next game. Are you missing the signal that the game is telling you that, or alerting you to a problem that's going to show up later on in the season?
Well, not the Giants game. I mean, that's like if you're that game to me was like if you're you're a great NBA team and you're going to win 60 games, but it's a Wednesday in Memphis and you have a bad game and you say, all right, you just chalk it up to that. It's going to happen. You're better. And again, they came back in 2 weeks and beat the brakes off the same team, probably because they were pissed about the first performance. So I don't think that impacted them at all. The Chicago game may have impacted them. Just like I said, they're used to beating people up. This is a very physical team and has been with the offensive line. Defensive fronts, both sides of the football. That's been their identity. That's been their strength for this entire run, basically since Andy Reid got here and got this team going in the right direction. That has been their whole philosophy. Win up front. And they got beaten up. Especially on the defensive side of the football. They got just out physical. Darnell Wright specifically was wiping out. I remember watching it live. I'm like, he's wiping out the whole side of the Eagles' defensive front, just collapsing it. And they had these massive holes from Monangai and Swift. That one, I think, gave them a little bit of pause. And then the next week was the Chargers game, which was the worst performance of the season from Jalen Hurts. So you had 4 interceptions. They still had a chance to win the game. And the final interception sealed it for the Chargers. I think his passer rating was 30 something. And then Las Vegas was on the schedule, and you get healthy. One of the worst teams in football, shutout, 31-0. Then they're at Washington, having a bad season. The Commanders. And
now, where are they at this point, record-wise?
10-5 after they beat the Commanders down there. The Commanders had given up by that point.
Right.
So they had a lull, and they took advantage of it. Nothing wrong with that. Then they went to Buffalo, and they won the 13-12 game, but that didn't feel like a win because, Josh Allen had a layup to win the game, and he missed it. One of the best quarterbacks in football, wide open receiver, and he missed it. And, they're human beings and it happens, but it was a good win because you beat a good team on the road in a difficult environment.
Who didn't score a lot of points on you?
No, 13-12 game.
I remember the weather. The weather was pretty horrible for that.
Sure. That played a part of it. But a win is a win. And then week 18 comes and you lose to the Commanders that same day, but you're playing all your backups. Tanner McKee played poorly. You're not even trying to win the game. I think people forget they're 11-5. If they had to win against the Commanders and they're playing their starters, they're going to win that game. Said Lincoln, and then all of a sudden they're 12-5 instead of 11-6, and then the playoffs come. And I would say the most disappointing, not because it was the playoffs. I think Chicago was the worst loss of the season, and San Francisco would be number 2 because that's a team they should have beaten. Had a lot of injuries at the time. Not that they were just banged up coming here, and the Eagles just played poorly and they lost the game. And it was a bad loss. There's and by the way, yeah, the offense played poorly and Jalen played poorly. And by that point, Saquon was back running the ball somewhat effectively. He had over 100 yards. But, the defense was disappointing. The strength of the team. They didn't give up a ton of points, obviously. But, when the offense did get the lead on a couple of occasions, they gave it right back. And that's a moment where if you're, versus, maybe top 10 like they were versus top 2 or 3, number 1 and 20, that's the difference of being top 10, maybe bottom of the top 10 versus top of the top 10. You're not going to, hey, if your offense is struggling and they manage to, grind through and get the lead, you stop the other team, especially a team that's banged up and struggling from a health standpoint, and they didn't do it. So it was a very disappointing loss in the playoffs because you're thinking, all right, you beat San Francisco, then you're going to go on the road and have the rematch against Chicago. Again, revenge after getting beaten up. Who knows how that shakes up? But certainly the Eagles had an opportunity to make a run, and then they probably go to Seattle or Los Angeles, probably lose there because those teams, in my opinion, were better. But I don't think it was nearly as bad as people made it out to be. Again, 11-6 looks a lot worse than 12-5, but you're 12-5 if you're trying to win week 18. But it's just different in people's minds.
In the 5 losses from the season, did the offense cost you 2 of those games and the defense cost you 3? Did the offense cost you 3 and the defense cost you 2? What's your assessment of that?
Well, I would say I would say Nick Sirianni would yell at you and say it's a team game. But if you want to blame it, certainly, it's interesting. So if you look at each loss, all right, Denver, you only score 17 points. So I think most people would say,
you have the lead in that game, though.
Exactly. It's a 17-3 game in the third quarter. Now most people will say that's the offense only scoring 17 points. I'd look at it differently. I'm like, you have a 17-3 lead in the third quarter and one of the best defenses in the NFL, and you can't hold on to it. They scored 18 of their 21 points in the fourth quarter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it was 17-3 through 3 quarters of play.
Yeah. And they won 12 for 62, 8 for 82, and 17 for 46 to win the game.
Right. So 3 long drives, really. 3 long drives.
So I kind of look at it differently than to me, like, okay, there's some limitations on this offense, but it's 17-3 entering the fourth quarter at home with your defense. You gotta close that out.
Yeah.
If you're and I know Vic was pissed about it. I know that for damn sure. So then the Giants game again. The Giants was next short week, so you're on the road short week. Of course, you only have to go up the Turnpike, the Jersey Turnpike, but still, you're on the road in a short week. Everybody contributed to that. The defense was terrible. The offense was terrible. It was just a terrible game, and I sort of flushed that one. I don't think it was that meaningful. Again, 2 weeks later, you beat the same team. And blew them out. So then you get to at Dallas, which again, very difficult place to play. I don't look at that as a bad loss.
And would you say leading into that Dallas game? Four good wins leading into that Dallas game.
Well, you can label good or bad. The bottom line is just, win and move forward.
Yeah.
No matter what it looks like.
It's hard to win a game in the NFL. I know, we know that.
Yeah. Now, the problem with the Dallas game, not that they lost 24-21, the problem, again, similar to Denver, they had a 21-0 lead early. Game should have been over. So again, who do you blame? The offense goes into a shell. That's fair. That was a problem all season. They have these little spurts where they're tremendously effective. And then for whatever reason, they go into this shell and don't do anything the rest of the game. They're up 21-0 early in the second quarter, and they lose 24-21.
I mean,
so who do you blame?
Is it fair to say? Based on how you just described that you hang that L on the defense? I mean,
that's what I'm saying.
The offense gave you 21 points. I mean, they gave you a 3-score lead. I mean, with a half of football to play. I mean,
well, no, it was early in the second quarter. So Dallas did score before halftime. Okay. So it was 21-7 at halftime. But that's my point. Like, who do you blame? Who do the fans blame? They can blame whoever they want. But you have a 3-touchdown lead. Yeah, you would prefer that the offense kept their foot on the gas and scored a little bit more. But you should be able to get out of there with a win. And they gave up 24 consecutive points. And again, long drives, 8 for 87, 10 for 73, 14 for 49, and the field goal at the end of the game to win it. 14-play drive. You can blame the offense. It's easy to blame the offense, but I think because people like the defense, they make too many excuses for the defense. Chicago is pretty self-evident. I said they got beat up.
Yeah, but in the Chicago game, it was a defense. It was defense.
Yeah, they got beat up. They got destroyed by the Chicago offensive line. The Chargers clearly. That's the one game you can put on the shoulders of Jalen Hurts. 4 interceptions.
So that's the 5 losses right there, right? So
yeah.
All right. So that's the 5. So out of the 5, just to recap, you have the team shits the bed in New York. That's a total bad loss across the board. And the offense takes the L in the Chargers game.
Yeah.
But the defense gives up a big enough lead that the offense provided, gives up long drives, and that's not really what you would expect or anticipate. So I guess in the moment, in the reality of the season, it's easy to look at it one way. When you step back now and I hear you describing, some of those, those specific losses, and you look at the lead and you look at the drive, somebody will say, hey, well, the offense sputtered and they couldn't get first downs and they were punting the football away and the opponent had opportunity and the defense ran out of gas. Well, the defense has an obligation to get the opponent off the field on a third.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you want to praise the defense, bottom line, you give them a 17-3 lead against Denver at home. You give them a 21-0 lead on the road at Dallas. You got to hold on. Yeah, it's ugly when the offense goes into those lulls, but you got to hold on. You have to hold on. And again, you go to the playoffs, ugly game. And, by that point, the writing is on the wall. Everybody hates Kevin Patullo, yada, yada, yada. He's to blame. Okay, they kick a field goal after an ugly drive. The Eagles, they got good field position. They only moved it 23 yards in 10 plays. It was ugly, but they get a field goal. It's 16-10. They're leading, and early in the fourth quarter, San Francisco responds, goes on a quick 67-yard, 7-play drive, and they take the lead back, 17-16. That's bad enough, right? You give up a quick drive, you have a 16-10 lead. All of a sudden, you're in a perilous state because you have a crappy offense and you're behind, letting a team that you should beat stay in the game. And the Eagles, again, the offense, not in by any stretch of the imagination, a pretty fashion, get the lead back with a Jake Elliott field goal, and they're up 19-17. And they give up a 13-play, 61-yard drive.
I mean,
and I know because I came on this show and I said it on the post-game show because everybody wanted to shit on the offense and I knew it was coming. And I'm like, they had the freaking lead and they gave up a 13-play touchdown drive. I mean, yeah, the offense was ugly. With the team, remember, very limited. By that point, it was Robinson and Jennings. Jennings is a good player, but, they were down backup receivers. George Kittle was back, but he had missed a long time, and he wasn't himself. He was playing through injury. Christian McCaffrey was banged up. Really banged up on the defensive side. They were playing with linebackers. They got off the street basically 2 weeks earlier because of all the injuries they suffered. That was a bad loss. And the bottom line is, yeah, the offense struggled and it was ugly and they should have turned field goals into touchdowns. And Jalen didn't play well. Saquon played okay. I think their longest, pass play of the game was 20 yards, and that was to Saquon. So they weren't getting any chunk plays. All of that is fair to say. And everybody gave the defense a pass.
I don't know why I don't know why the defense gets a pass on the 2025 season. I don't know why this entire offseason, why this entire conversation leading up through mandatory mini camp and everything else, I don't know why the entire narrative has been about how bad the offense was last year.
Well, it's pretty bad. I mean, it's fair.
But John, whether you define it as good or bad, through your eyes, you just outlined in detail that the offense put the team in a position to win, and the defense gave it up. The defense gave it up. They didn't give it up on a Hail Mary. They gave up the leads in 3 of those losses. And in the wild card game, the Eagles defense gave up long, sustaining drives that allowed for those teams to beat the Eagles. It wasn't the offense. The offense gave them the lead. But that's true. They in the wild card game, they had the lead. They lost the lead. They came back and took the lead. And then San Francisco put together with a makeshift offense against the Vic Fangio defense, a long, sustaining, whatever it was, 13-play drive, and won the game. That's the defense. That's Vic Fangio. That's the defense that takes the L on that. I don't care whether Jalen was 9 of 14 or 22 of 27. The Eagles had the lead and were in a position to win if the defense makes the play, if the defense stops the opponent. And the defense didn't on 3 of the 5 losses in the regular season, and the defense didn't do it in the wild card game. Yet the whole damn offseason, we're killing Jalen. We're retooling, we're firing. I'm not saying whether Petula should have been fired or not. I'm not going down that road. But my point is, the whole narrative is that Jalen Hurts and this offense can't win football games. Well, you just corrected me 13 minutes ago on behalf of Nick Sirianni that Nick Sirianni is going to stop you in your tracks and tell you it's a team game. Well, the defensive side of the football shit the bed in those games when they needed to make a big
both
play.
Sides shit the bed. But that's the next point.
But the offense put you in a position to win. They gave you the lead, and all you had to do was
look, you're talking to the one guy who tried to put that in perspective and tried to put a little bit on the defense. And happy honeymoon to Zander. Is he back yet? By the way, like he really pushed back on me because everybody was so upset at the offense, and it is a team game, and it is fair to point out that. Well, again, they could, instead of going 10 plays for 23 yards, they could punch it in and put the game away and be in a better situation. So it's fair, when they have these big halves like in Dallas and then go to sleep in the second half or vice versa. Against Tampa Bay, they were lights out in the first half, went to sleep in the second half. Against the Rams, it was terrible early, great late. They don't have to go into these lulls. And the bottom line is Eagles were 24th in offense last year, which is not acceptable considering they're the highest paid offense in the NFL and yada yada, and everybody's great and everybody's this and everybody's that. They were the 24th ranked offense, 16th in DVOA, which is more important. So efficiency, they're mediocre, right in the middle of the league. Again, there's a lot worse. That I pointed out as well numerous times. People act like this is the worst defense in recorded history because they made up their minds. Kevin Petula was the problem. All right, fine. He was the problem. He's gone. You removed the problem. There were a lot of offenses worse than the Eagles last year. Exactly 50%, right smack dab in the middle. They were. Defensively, they were 13th overall, but 7th in DVOA, which is efficiency. So, they're a top, and that's when I say they're a top 10 defense. That's what I'm talking about, the advanced numbers, not the yardage, which is kind of bullshit. But
but the top 10 defense failed the test.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I feel like I got to push back against the people who say, well, the offense is this and they're to blame. And now I got to push back on you. I mean, yes, they gave up the lead. I'm the one who pointed it out and constantly pointed out. There's no indictable offense that you can't hold up, even if you're put in precarious positions because the offense doesn't do its job. If you're truly elite, you'll find a way. And they were unable to do it. I think it's fair to point that out. But I'm not going to sit here and to Nick's point, look, the offense could have won that game. They didn't. And the defense could have won that game, and they didn't. And that's why the Eagles didn't win that game. Both sides could have won that game. Both sides, I argue, should have won that game. The offense should have punched it in. The defense should have held up. Both failed. Yeah, but in the immediacy of afterwards, everybody was blaming the offense because they didn't like a coach, and they let the defense get off scot-free, failing to realize, look, all right, it was ugly, but they got the lead twice in the second half. And both times it didn't hold up.
Yeah, and the opponent put together long, sustaining drives where somebody on the defensive side of the football has a responsibility or an expectation to make the play. And they didn't make it. Okay, fine. But the criticism, I don't recall any.
You got it from me on the post-game show. You got it from me on that. I don't recall. I got a lot of pushback for it.
Well, all that pushback is wrong. I don't recall anyone ripping Vic Fangio or ripping the defense.
Well, I wasn't ripping Vic.
I'm not saying. I'm just in terms of the context. The defense gets the L on three of the 5 losses in the regular season, and the defense gets the L in the wild card game. Because when they were on the field to win it, the personality of the game, the offense, good or bad, put your team in a position to win. The defense was handed the baton to win the race or stumble at the finish line, and they didn't get it done. And that's what happened. That's the season in a nutshell from 2025.
Well, I realize, the natural human nature is everybody wants everything tied up in a nice little bow. And, football's not that way, because it's such a contextual game. If the offense does its job in Tampa in the second half against the Rams in the first half, you're not struggling to win a game at the end.
Yeah, but you win the game, John. You're 4-0.
Yeah, but nobody. But you might give up the same touchdown late, but it doesn't matter because you've built up an advantage because they've done their job. That's why Nick calls it the ultimate team game. Yeah, sometimes it's special teams. Again, they won a game on special teams. Nobody cares. Nobody ever cares about special teams. They blocked a freaking field goal. They should have lost that game.
Yeah.
They blocked a freaking. It's the only time I've ever seen it. the walk-off field goal block, that game's over. Rams are walking off. They finally beat the Eagles. They're all happy. They block a field goal. Is that, Jordan Davis deserves credit in that moment. Jalen Carter for collapsing the pocket.
The defense gets the win in that. The defense gets the
special
W.
teams. Again, you're talking about defensive players on special teams. That's a special teams play.
Special teams play.
But they're out there for a reason. That's also coaching as well. A lot of teams don't put their stars on field goal block.
Well, is that every time?
The Eagles do because they're so good at it. There might be a few times if it's a 25-yard, but certainly in key situations, those guys have a knack for it, so they're always out there. But there's so much that goes into winning and losing a football game, and everybody wants to boil it down to it's Jalen Hurts' fault, or it's the defense's fault, or it's Kevin Patullo's fault. And 9 times out of 10, it's a confluence of things. You boil it down to the problems on offense. Well, he can't do this. He can't do that. The running game didn't do this. The offensive line didn't do this. And it's a confluence of multiple things, but people want the simple answer. So the simple answer is Kevin Patullo's the problem. Well, then everything should be fine this year. But it's not going to be fine. It might be better. But there's going to be adversity because no one person is the root of a massive problem. And, to fix it, you got to have multiple things going in the right direction and being put together and chemistry. And by the way, no time is that ever somebody who's not on the field. There's only so much you can do if you're not playing. The players have to execute, which people hate that term. And that's the biggest part of football. And they hate it. And don't get me wrong, people use it as a crutch, coaches, and they'll say, well, we didn't execute on this. And sometimes they're giving you lip service. But the bottom line is that is the result of every single NFL game, whether in Philadelphia or any other NFL city. Who executed better on a particular game day? As boring as that sounds, that is going to give you the answer of who wins each and every week. But no, that's boring to people. It's play calling. It's this, it's that. It's one of the things I struggle. I struggle. Like everybody knows if they're by themselves, if they're big football fans, they know if you take the emotion out of it and they're talking about a different team that they don't like and they're just watching a football game, there's no skin in the game. Everybody knows they have no idea what is being called, why it's being called, why it's successful, why it failed. But they think they do. And that's where I say all the time, you're not judging play calling, you're judging play results. Which is fine. That's what you should do. Are they successful? Did they execute? That's what people are judged on. Understand you're judging the result. You're not judging anything else.
Agreed. Tell me what you can do. Don't tell me what you can't do. And take that statement and put it in the context of the incredible run that Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni and this offense has had within this time period. And when you put it in that perspective, offensively, the team was in a position to win more than they were in a position to lose. That's the facts. Whether Jalen was 9 for 16 or had a perfect quarterback rating, the end result of the game, or leading up to the end result of the game, the offense did what the offense is supposed to do. Put your team in a position to win. The other side of the line is supposed to close it out. And in 2025, the other side of the line, the other side of the ball, didn't close it out. Yet they ride in. And again, I'm not being disrespectful. I appreciate the talent. I appreciate the tenure. I appreciate the conversation. But they ride into 26 under the umbrella of being potentially being one of the top defenses in the league. And just a season ago, they shit the bed in the fourth quarter when they needed to shut the opponent down. And I'm worried about fixing the offense.
Well, you should be worried about fixing the offense.
But this is my point. If the offense is puts your team in a position to win, Joe Burrow is on the Eagles because he can throw for 4,500 yards and 32 touchdowns. Well, the end result of that on a game-by-game basis is that the team's either going to be in a position to win or not, whether it's Joe Burrow or Jalen Hurts. I do know that Jalen Hurts and this offense has been in a position to win more than lose. And yet we're blowing them up.
I mean, that's by that. They won 11 games. I mean, people forget. It's hard to win 11 games in the NFL. And really, they won, they would have won 12 because Washington, wasn't relevant in week 18. They just played all their backups. And Tanner McKee didn't play well, and they lost the game. But obviously, if the starters play, they're going to win that game.
Get this all the time, John. Defense should not be on the field for 30-plus minutes. Well, if the defense...
That's true.
If the defense...
You're going to be.
But if the defense isn't supposed to be on the field that long, they can get off the field.
Well, that, again, and that's the context. And you have one side saying they shouldn't be on the field, which is right. In a vacuum, this is correct. And then you have your side, in a vacuum, you're right. It's not guess what? You can force a 3-and-out and get off the field. It's one of the things that you will never hear Vic Fangio ever complain about a turnover giving the defense a short field. You will never hear him complain about it because that's the mentality you have to have as a defensive guy. Your job is to stop them no matter what. Doesn't matter if they have to go 80 yards, 90 yards, or if they go 20 yards. Obviously, it's much more difficult, but you can't make an excuse. You got to go out there and do it. That's the mentality you have to have on defense. So, in a vacuum, whoever made that comment is right. You don't want your defense on the field. It's a 60-minute game. They're going to be on the field over 30 at times, but consistently, the more they're on the field, they're going to wear down. That's correct. But at any moment, somebody can make a play. Somebody could step up and make a play. Might be, people forget in Super Bowl 52, that was not a good defensive performance by the Philadelphia Eagles. Tom Brady set a Super Bowl record for passing yards. That was not, but they made a play at the end. They made a play. Games have personalities. That game had a personality. That game was a shootout. And they made a defensive play at the end of the game. Brandon Graham with the strip sack, even though the defense played poorly. And it's remembered fondly. Nobody remembers, hey, that defense was pretty bad that day. Nobody remembers. And that's the point. Look, you can't, I've been pointing out in the second half of the season, and no one likes it. I said, well, Jalen Carter's not playing like Jalen Carter, guys. He's hurt. So, the optimism about defense, Jalen Carter healthy, you've gotten better with Tariq Woolen. You've certainly gotten more talented with Tariq Woolen, Jonathan Grenard, and Jihad Campbell at being a starter. You're more talented. So in theory, you should be better. We'll see how it shakes out. Offensively, there's many more problems than defensively. So I don't think it's valuable to stick your head in the sand and say, yes, the defense wasn't perfect. That's true. But if you're going to grade each side against each other, well, the defense is better than the offense. I mean, you can't go, especially in the modern NFL, you can't go a full half of football without completing a pass. You almost have to, you almost have to work at that.
Well, what was the personality or the factors that led to that?
The personality is the style of football they played.
Because they won that game and they scored. How many points did they score in that game? They won that game 31-25. Is that the game we're talking about, the Buccaneers game, right?
Well, they did it twice. They did it twice. I think it was the Rams game. I could be wrong, but they did it twice where they didn't complete a pass in a half. 30 minutes of football. I mean, that is just and that's what they're trying to do with this offense in a lot of ways. And I think people misunderstand it's more about the running game. But when it does come to the passing game, there's more so-called layups in this offense. So if you are struggling like that, sometimes you need to throw a smoke screen or just an easy swing pass or just something to get the quarterback back in rhythm, get him a layup. And for whatever reason, the Eagles would have those are the most notable examples. But inside, there were these long stretches where they can't complete a pass, they can't get a first down. And that's just unacceptable. And, hopefully that will be something they improve on with Sean Mannion. But the quarterback's got to be willing to do it.
Well, let's give him the benefit of the doubt. Let's say he does it, and let's say the Eagles improve, and let's say the number of 3 and outs come down, and let's say that there's no half of football where Jalen throws up a goose egg, and the end result of all of that is you're going to be in a position to win the game if you have the lead. If that leads 3 points or 7 points or 8 points or 13 points or whatever it is, you're going to be in a position to win. And at that point, the offense hands the baton over to the defense, and it's up to the defense to deliver the goods. And even on the worst performances of the season, that's what played out. And the defense didn't get it done. And I get it. There's lots of talent on the defense. I just don't understand when I hear it in this context. Why are they getting a pass? Why is the defense getting a pass?
Well, because people want to, look, I mean, whether they get a pass or not, there's certain people who point out, look, this is an issue. I'm one of them. That was an issue. But you also try to add the context to it, which is, well, they are on the field too long. They are worn down at times because the offense is inefficient. They are in that position because the offense didn't take advantage and left meat on the bone. It is the ultimate team game, so you can't have it both ways.
John, how often in Fangio's defense, how often in a drive, how often is Fangio rotating players in, rotating fresh legs up front? How often is that taking place in a series when his defense is on the field? It's an adjustment game. How often is he doing that?
I mean, the only rotational positions on defense are the defensive line. And that's it. I mean, corners play every snap. If it's the only difference is it nickel or base or dime, and if there's 4, 5, 6 on the field. But Quinyon Mitchell's always on the field. Cooper DeJean's always on the field. Reek Woolen's always on the field. Drew Makuba, if he's healthy, will always be on the field. The linebackers, Zach Bond and Jihad Campbell will be on the field. Zach will be on the field for every play. Jihad 95% if he stays healthy. Those are not rotational positions.
Yeah, so those guys don't. So the rotational positions, which are the big guys,
the
big uglies, that play up front, those guys are changing with what? With the down, with the down, with the play.
Well,
how's he rotating the front?
Vic doesn't. Well, it's Clint Hurt is responsible to rotate during the game because Vic's got other things, but they since they haven't been comfortable with their edge rushing position for a long part of the time, and it usually has been you'd like it to be 4. They've essentially boiled it down to 3. On paper, they should be able to get it up to 4 this year. Adding Grenard, adding Ebiketie, Epinesa as well. They should be able to play 4. But, Vic gets comfortable, and I remember this with Fletcher Cox even more. And one of the big things with Jalen Carter is they played him so damn much in the Super Bowl season. He got worn down. Everybody talks about the offensive line and Saquon. Jalen Carter got worn down, played more snaps than any other defensive interior player in football by a wide margin in 2024. Now, part of that is they played extra games because they went to the Super Bowl, but still, it's wear and tear on his body. And, they have a better rotation because they have more depth. So they have played 4: Carter, Davis, Ajomo, Byron Young. But I still think they need to be more disciplined. And that's hard to do. And again, I go back to the Eagles when Jim Schwartz was here. It seemed like they would talk about every year that we have to play Fletcher Cox less. And every year, they don't want to take him off the field because you're trying to win the game.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to be, and he was their best player at the time. You have to be disciplined to take Jalen Carter off the field and say, all right, take a breather for this series and let Byron Young handle this series, or let Morrow handle this series. But then, what if they're driving? Do you want to keep them on the bench? Everybody, why is Jalen Carter on the bench? It's not as easy as it seems. But you do have to. I do think they have to be more disciplined now that they see what's happened, and manage him a little bit better. And sometimes you're going to give up some points because of it. But the key is you want him as fresh as possible for the fourth quarter, because that's where you win and lose games, because a lot of NFL games are going to be one possession games, and you either close it or you don't close it, as you're pointing out. And too often they didn't close it. Now, they didn't have Jonathan. They didn't have the big pass rusher. They didn't have the closer who could sack. This year they do. I believe they do. He's a very good pass rusher. Last year they didn't have a healthy Jalen Carter. This year, in theory, they will. So if you think about in a situation this year, it's going to be Grenard, Nolan Smith if he's healthy, Jalen Carter, Moro Jomo. That is a big time pass rush if those four are healthy.
John, is it reasonable to conceive or reasonable to believe the tea leaves that because Jalen Carter is represented by Rosenhaus, is it reasonable to believe that Jalen Carter will not play in 2026?
No, absolutely not. So
Jalen Carter would play if no deal gets done. If a contract agreement does not get done between the Eagles and Carter, or really the Eagles and Rosenhaus, that's how it works. Jalen does what? He goes into the 26 season on his final deal. He's coming back from injury and potentially would be in a position to risk a bigger payday because of the injury. So why is it an automatic?
Well, he's number one. He's under contract through 2027. So he would have to sit out 2 years. And nobody's going to pay him money if he sits out 2 years.
Well, who wins the poker match then? If Rosenhaus and Howie are in the negotiations, and is that how it works, by the way? Does Drew Rosenhaus does all negotiation happen with Howie and then get finalized? No. Else, how does it work?
Well, yeah, certainly Drew, and it's Howie doesn't negotiate. He's obviously he's involved, but the nuts and bolts that was Jake Rosenberg's job for years. Bryce Johnston, now it's Grant Ryder's job. Bryce Johnson just left the organization. Those are the guys who do the nuts and bolts of the contracts. Obviously, it's a organizational thing, but no, Howie's not in there doing crossing T's and dotting I's on actual contract language. But
well, Drew Rosenhaus is on the phone right now, and he says, "Yo, we're looking for $36 million, and we want to do the extension now." The Eagles say, "Tough shit. We'll talk to you after the season."
Potentially. I mean, the Eagles have a history of identifying players that they want to extend early and doing it proactively, because ultimately you're going to save money that way. When they don't do it, it is an indication that they have questions over certain player. In this instance, they haven't gotten it done yet. So people are starting to say, all right, why do they have questions? Is it, the immaturity issues? Is it the shoulders? Why do they have questions? But ultimately, whether they have questions or not, they have the vast majority of the leverage. The only leverage Jalen Carter has at this stage of his career is basically what you saw with AJ, unhappiness. Do you want an unhappy player in your locker room? They can ask for a trade, but ultimately, he's under contract to the Eagles through 2027. With his 5th-year option, which is $27 million. He could come to camp and highlight that unhappiness by holding in for a week or two and showing up but not practicing. But ultimately, he's got to play for the Eagles, so they hold most of the leverage. The only leverage the Carter camp has is basically, do you want an unhappy player? And that's up to the Eagles to make the decision on how they want to handle it, obviously. But there are certain people, and you'll see it next year with Quinyon and Cooper, they're going to get those deals done. Yeah, life changes quickly. If they get hurt, that could be a hurdle. You've seen it in the past with Jalen's first extension. People are asking that quote, why haven't they been proactive with Jalen Hurts? Because they have some questions now. That's what it's an indication of. But no, Jalen Carter's not going to sit out the season.
I mean, if I'm the Eagles, even on the AJ Brown scenario, AJ, I don't give a shit if you're happy or not.
That's easy to say, but they went through it and they saw the impact on the team, and they don't want to go through it again.
Well, what was the impact?
The impact was
what? It wasn't on the field. It wasn't on the field in terms of W's or L's.
Well, sure, it was.
Well,
they weren't as good. People have pointed out, he had his worst season. The offense had its worst season. The constant passive aggressive social media stuff.
Who cares about social media? Why does social media and a player?
Because it's a front-facing industry. It is a public industry. So
who cares? Why does an organization who's investing that much money in the football team and they have that much money tied up, in franchise value, what do they care about what a player puts on social media? Who cares? I don't understand that. I don't understand the dynamic. It's not, I just don't understand how you make a decision, or that's one of the reasons why. Better than most, better than all from your tenure.
I'm not saying they make decisions on social media. By and large, nobody cares what insert stupid X handle cares, but the overreaching, Jeffrey Lurie had to talk to AJ about, tone it down. All right. Basically, we get it. The offense isn't great, but we're trying to win. And this isn't helping, basically. And they've made a cut. They didn't trade AJ Brown because they thought they were getting better. They traded AJ Brown because they don't want to go through what they went through last year. Again. That's it. and he wanted to go somewhere else. And again, the Mike Tomlin quote, you want volunteers. You don't want hostages. You don't want unhappy people, because if you have unhappy people, it tends to seep into other areas.
At the risk of lowering the value of how good you are on offense, when it's very difficult to find star players, and you have a star player under contract, he just redid his deal, under contract, and you flush him out and make a trade, and the end result of the decision, the way it looks right now, is that the offense is less than they were a year ago. So you've gone from 11-5, throwing out the Commanders game, and a loss to the Niners in the playoffs that you should have won if the defense would have held the lead. And now you've taken out one of your significant weapons, stars on offense, forced your second star on offense from a receiving standpoint to move out now onto the island, filled in the rest of the island with a number one draft pick who you don't know whether is unproven at this point, certainly doesn't come out of an SEC school, filled with 3 or 4 other potential receivers that collectively or collaboratively, could work, maybe work, probably will work, or maybe not work at all, and have now relegated your offense down to Jalen, Saquon, a healthy Dallas Goedert, and DeVonta Smith. You've put yourself in worse position than you were a year ago, and you're telling me that because you're changing the scheme, you're telling me that the team is going to be better. The team was in a position to win. You were in a position to win. The Eagles weren't on the downside despite the moves. The Eagles, coming off the Super Bowl win, were in a position to put together one hell of a run. Now you're blowing it up. You blew it up. Offensively, it's going to be harder. That's going to put more pressure on the defense, who wasn't able to get it done a year ago in the biggest moments of the game. So that's what I don't get. That's what I don't understand. That's where you see it happening in real time. And there's no way this football team is better without A.J. Brown. And I just wish the Eagles would have said, yo, AJ, I don't give a shit. You're playing football in Philadelphia.
Yeah, well, that's easy to say.
Yeah.
It's harder to accomplish.
That's why I'm worried about Jalen Carter. I'm not worried about Jalen Carter because Jalen Carter won't feel the pressure from his mates.
Well, you can't just pay everybody.
I know that, but what I'm saying is maybe you're going to pay him, maybe you're not. And maybe Jalen.
I mean, you have to admit why that job is difficult, because you have to make difficult decisions. I always talk about Joe Shane and, typical conversations being broadcast to the general public. Again, I talk about the public-facing nature. If these conversations get out, people aren't going to be happy, because everybody loves the players. Everybody, Jalen Carter's great. Jalen Hurts is great. Pay him, pay this guy, pay that guy, pay that. Can't do it. It's the cap league.
Well, the league and the market and the position is going to determine, the benchmark for the value. But that wasn't the issue in the A.J. Brown decision. That didn't factor into it. Wasn't
No,
about
we're
the
going.
money.
No,
It
we're going.
wasn't
We're
about the
going
money
back and
for
forth
him.
with Jalen Carter and AJ.
No,
AJ Brown didn't want to be here.
well,
That's it.
am I wrong in remembering this, John? Not this past year, but am I wrong in remembering that 2 seasons ago, Myles Garrett didn't want to be in Cleveland? And Myles Garrett played that season as a member of the Browns. And
Well, the difference is Myles Garrett at that time didn't want to play for Cleveland because of his contract situation. And he'd prefer to be on a winner as he is now. I'm sure that factored into it. But he had gone public with the desire to want out, and all of a sudden he's back. Why? Because they gave him a big raise. So that answered it. That answered the question. Now that he's moved on, both sides, I think that was a better trade for Cleveland than people realize, simply because they're not in a position to win, and you're wasting, unfortunately, because of the nature of modern sports. And the goal is, Ricky Bobby rules. Are you going to win? And, they've had them for years. They're a bad organization, a bad team. They can't take advantage of that particular. And by the time, if they start making good decisions with their latest shift to Todd Monken and their latest new coaching staff, by the time they get good, Myles Garrett won't be Myles Garrett. It'll be 3 or 4 years down, or it'll be 34 or 35. It won't be the same guy. So all of a sudden you get a bunch of draft capital. You get Jared Verse, who's very young, and maybe you get good. And by the time you are good, Jared Verse is a all-pro player, and maybe you're off and running. That's the idea from the Browns' perspective, because they're in a different position than the Rams. Now, the Rams are the best team in football on paper. And I say that with all due respect to the Seattle Seahawks. They're the best team in football on paper. And they're a legitimate Super Bowl contender. So what do? They're ready right now. So, yeah, go get Myles Garrett, who might be the best football player in the world, pure football player, taking away the impact of the quarterback position. They're a team. Same thing happened here with Saquon. I talk about it all the time. That was a good decision by the New York Giants to move on from Saquon Barkley. That was a good decision by the New York Giants. It was a great decision for the Philadelphia Eagles to take advantage of the fact the New York Giants weren't in a position to utilize Saquon Barkley. For them, they were on the cusp, a legitimate Super Bowl contender. They make the move, and the rest is history, and they win the Super Bowl. The part that people don't understand is that was actually a good decision by the New York Giants as well.
I agree.
Prefer that he signed somewhere else than not be in the division, because it makes, again, these are the kind of barbs you have to take if you're the general manager of a football team, because people are going to, they gave up Saquon Barkley to the Eagles in the division. The Giants fans hate the Eagles and vice versa, and spike the football and yada, yada, yada.
For every action, there's a reaction. For every decision that's made, there's a follow-up process to the decision. There's the result. The Eagles have been in a position to be great, and you've reached a point, the 2026 season, where a healthy offensive line is going to be potentially the best offensive line in football. A healthy offensive line is going to give Saquon the ability to be better than what he was in 25, which, by the way, was 1,100 yards or whatever it was. Maybe he gets more carries. Maybe they run him till the wheels come off, whatever the case may be. But the offense is now in a position to be better than they've ever been before. And you pull the plug, you take your most talented player in the receiving core, you move him because he's not happy even though he's under contract, and now put more pressure on your offense to make up for lost ground and still put yourself in a position to win in the game and hope that the defense gets off the field and holds the lead. That's where we are. We're in the same.
I mean,
we're in the same boat as where the team is in the same position today as they were a year ago, minus a star, and with questions on whether or not the defenses can win the game for you. We're in the same position we were a year ago.
It's not exactly unique to have a player in the NFL who's not happy, and you move on, and it becomes addition by subtraction, especially at the wide receiver position. I mean,
yeah, I get it.
I mean, everybody from, most notably locally, T.O. I mean, how many teams did T.O. end up playing for? Nobody. I mean, he's one of the best receivers of all time. Nobody's giving him up if there aren't issues. San Francisco never would have gave him up to begin with if there weren't issues. Long before Philadelphia. And then everywhere he went after Philadelphia. Until, obviously he got older. But, the presumption at that time was that, the Eagles, the Andy Reid Eagles couldn't win the big game. I love, by the way, that if you don't win the Super, there's no big games until the Super Bowl. NFC championship games are pretty big. Divisional round playoffs are pretty big, but I digress. They won to the playoffs, whatever it was, 4 straight times. And then they get T.O. and they finally go to the Super Bowl. And they didn't win it, but at least they went to the Super Bowl. And, he goes off the rails, and the next season was kind of ugly. And by the second season, they were back in the playoffs. There are other, and what I'm trying to say is there are other ways to do it. I covered the Vikings when they traded Randy Moss. Did they get better? Fuck no. From a talent perspective, they were back in the playoffs a couple years later. It's the second best receiver of all time. You're not replacing him.
Well, a couple years.
There's 30% turnover in the NFL every year for different reasons. Sometimes it's trades. Sometimes it's people are unhappy. Sometimes it's people are just cut. Sometimes they sign in free agency and they go somewhere else.
Yeah, I get all that. This I'm saying is self-inflicted. The Eagles don't have. If the Eagles.
No, the Eagles didn't have to move on from T.O. Technically, they could have gave him the money. Eventually he was going to go off the rails, but after the season he had, they could have redone his contract and made him happy. I just gave you an example with the 2 examples. The Vikings had Stephon Diggs at the height of his career. It was a pain in the ass. They got rid of him.
Yeah, but the decision on AJ, why it's different, or why I believe it's different, by the way, I could be wrong. Why I believe it's different is that decision now ultimately could change the direction of this team because it forces or creates Jalen Hurts. It forces or creates the final hurrah for Saquon Barkley. It forces and creates the end of the Dallas Goedert era in Eagles football. So one decision puts the rest of the offense going into 2026 in a, what would you say, a prove it season, a prove you're worth the money, prove you're worth the money. That one decision is now creates three ultimate decisions that are going to be made.
I mean, Dallas, we've been talking about Dallas Goedert moving on for 3 years. And the only reason he's here is because he keeps willing to take less money. You know, he went from 14 million to 10 million to 7 million, which is rare.
Yeah.
You know, nothing to do with AJ. Saquon Barkley, nothing to do with AJ.
No, I'm talking about I'm talking about going forward.
Yeah, but I mean the decision has nothing to do with AJ. Jalen, a little bit, yes. That's the only one. Because, you know, essentially, you know, AJ's gone. And by the way, AJ, phenomenal player. Everybody watches this show knows how much respect I have for him. Good dude as well. Didn't like playing in this offense, bottom line. Period. I mean, right, wrong, indifferent, not even making a judgment. That's just the reality of the situation.
Yeah.
Didn't like playing in this style of offense. Didn't want to play in this style of offense. Didn't believe that they were going to be able to shift from this style of offense because of the quarterback. I'm going to be honest. And we'll see if he's right or wrong. Maybe he's wrong. But that's where you were. And that's why they moved on. They didn't move on because he wasn't a good player. They didn't move on because they were going to be better with Makai Lemon. They didn't move on because nobody liked him. Everybody loves the guy. To the bitter end, when he came in to say goodbye, everybody in that building loves the guy on a personal level. Maybe, you know, he had a whatever the falling out was with Jalen. And for all the rumors, I think it's more to do with football than anything else. You know, he's a unique guy. He's driven by different things. And he's driven by wanting to dominate the player across from him. And he didn't believe he had the opportunity to do it here. That's it.
End the story. Last 30 minutes of the show, Johnny Mac. My last appearance on Birds 365, maybe never to return again. I started the show. I wanted to go inside John McMullen's world and understand a little bit about what you're preparing to do when the Eagles report at the end of the month. And I'm not necessarily talking about preparing what stories you're going to cover and all of that. That's going to happen in real time. You're an NFL veteran with a big tenure. You've seen everything. You've done everything. You've covered everything. Now you're going into camp. You see what's you understand what this team is. What are you going in to see when camp begins? What does John McMullen expect to see when you get to camp to cover the 2026 training camp?
Yeah, at this stage, I'd like to pay more attention to how the coaches are interacting with the players, more than anything about, you know, what they're running, what they're doing, because I think that's more important. You know, I think that connection, those relationships. I think those are the things that you get to see at practice that you can never see anywhere else, and you get to see it up close. So, one of my favorite things over the years was watching Jeff Stoutland coach offensive linemen. You can hear it, you're close enough, you can see it. And especially with young coaches, and we're in this position with Sean Desai on defense a couple of years ago. Now it'll be with Sean Mannion on offense. Are they overwhelmed? Are they, Nick has said he's going to have unscripted periods from, usually, if Shane was here or, Kevin was here that he had a long relationship with, he might script the practice out and say, we're going to work on backed up. We're going to work on red zone. We're going to work on situational football. Be ready for it. With Sean, because he lacks experience, he's going to basically not tell him what he's going to call, in the practice, and see if he's ready for it, which I think is, people say, what does Nick do? There's an example. It's his job to coach the coaches. So, by doing that, he thinks, he'll be better prepared for the in-game situation of you don't know what's coming. So you better be ready for it. And if it's 3rd and 14 with 2 minutes left, you got to have something on your call sheet to call. Or if it's in the red zone and it's 3rd and 5, or it's, 2-point conversion to win the game, whatever, again, you're just trying to get better in practice. But in this case, you're also trying to coach the young coach who hasn't done it before. So I think that's going to be interesting to see how that shakes out in practice. And he said, even Vic craves that at times of wanting those unscripted periods where, it's just not, you're just not trying to get better. A lot of times in practice, you like joint practices, especially if you're struggling in the red zone, you might go to Mike Vrabel, you're practicing with the Patriots, and say, look, we need a red zone period because we need some work in the red zone. And you script that with the opposing coach, and that's why it's more valuable than the preseason games, because preseason you say, well, I really want to get some red zone work. Well, you got to get to the red zone. Maybe you don't get to the red zone, but you can script it in practice so it becomes more valuable. But I think it's going to be very important, especially with the young offensive coaches, that see how they react, see how Jalen Hurts reacts to another new quarterbacks coach in Parks Frazier. And we already got to see a little bit of it in the spring, but those are the kinds of things I look at more than, but you're going to hear a lot of under center and motion and bunch. And, I've already explained they're doing that. And that's what people are usually focused on. And that's what I used to focus on, but now I focus more on, what's going on, the teaching aspect of it. And Jim Schwartz deserves credit for that, because he kind of explained that to me years ago, how the whole setup is. Spring is for teaching. Training camp, it kind of bleeds over. Some teaching at the start, but then you start to evaluate what you have. And then when the season comes, it's all about preparation for the next opponent. So it's teaching, evaluation, preparation. And that's how the NFL system is sort of set up.
The one thing that I'll always remember or give credit to Seth Joyner for saying this, and it's so true. If a coach has the ability to make a player better, the player is going to listen. If the coach is telling him shit that isn't going to make him better at what he does, he's looking, but he's not listening.
Yeah, no doubt. You have to earn their respect. And yeah, Seth's 100% correct. Every player says that. He's not unique in that aspect. That, everybody, if that's what players are looking for, because that's what coaching is. Coaching is teaching. At it, it's in the case, especially at a position coach, you're teaching technique, you're teaching fundamentals, and if you, especially with good players like Seth, if you show them something and it helps them, then they're really invested. And they know pretty quickly if guys are in over their head.
Yeah, I'd be willing to say they know immediately from the first conversation or the first look or the first practice.
Yeah. So yeah, that's it's a personnel driven game. I say it all the time. People are so obsessed with coaching, and coaching is important. People act like I say it's not important, but they're not listening. It's important. It's just important for different reasons than you think. And the biggest is that teaching, especially now. I say to you can go on Google now, Joe Krause. I say this all the time. You can find actual playbooks from anybody you want. Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan. It's easy to copy it. Got the play right in front of you, diagrammed out. Now go teach it so everybody can execute it. That's the hard part. And then if you get to that point, if you're good enough and lucky enough to get to that point, then you got to pull it out at the right time if you're a play caller. And you got to set it up and you got to sequence it. And all of that is very, very important. I'm not saying it isn't. But way before you got to get to that point, the foundational aspect of it is much more important. And that's what Seth is talking about, the teaching aspect of it. That's the more important part. And that's boring. So, but that's the foundational part of it.
Well, from your observation in camp, does Nick Sirianni and Vic Fangio have real hardcore conversations about what's happening on defense? I'm not talking about waving and smiling and talking and standing there with their arms and all that other shit. Or is, because of Fangio's tenure, Fangio makes whatever decision he wants to make, and Nick kind of allows him to do it. Is that the dynamic between Fangio and Sirianni?
Well,
and I'm not saying I'm not saying it's wrong, by the way. I'm just saying is that if you're the head coach, you're the head coach, and Vic Fangio is one of your lieutenants, he's your defensive coordinator, he's got all the medals, or whatever he has all the cred. He has more cred than you, but you're more important than him, at least on paper. You're the head coach. How do you manage? How does Nick Sirianni manage Vic Fangio? Because my follow-up to that would be, at any point during the 25 season, when the defense was giving the game away at the end and couldn't get off the field, Does Nick Sirianni call Fangio on the headset and say, "Yo, Vic, get the fucking team off the field"? Does he say that to him?
Well, no, number one.
Shit.
Number two.
John, I after I got called out for cursing, I promised I was not going to curse again.
No, I mean, well, that's not going to accomplish anything, to be blunt. But Vic can't get him off the field. Vic's trying to get him off the field. But to the point when you have it's a good it's a good dynamic to see Sean Desai versus Vic Fangio. Sean is a very young coach who basically played the same defense as Vic Fangio, learned under Vic Fangio, played the same scheme, didn't work because the tougher part is teaching the scheme, not copying the scheme. And Vic likes Sean a lot, by the way. But when you have somebody as accomplished and good as Vic Fangio and you're smart, you delegate and, he's in charge at the same time of the defense. But at the same time, there are, basic restrictions he has to elude by. He has to, the Eagles have a certain style of play and game management that everybody has to be on board with on both sides of the football. If Vic were the head coach, maybe they're not as aggressive. Your cursing is being popular. Maybe they're not aggressive as, they are. He'd prefer that. But he knows going in, they're going to be pretty damn aggressive on the plus side of the field.
Thank you, CZ. I appreciate that.
So, if you're smart and you're in charge and you have good people, you delegate. If you're worried about the people and they're not performing up to the level, you either do one or two things. You move on and go to somebody else, or if you like them and think they have an upside, maybe you try to help them along, try to lift them up. The Eagles have a luxury to have Vic Fangio, so you're not gonna meddle a lot on that side of the football if you're smart. But for the people that think that Vic is, telling Howie who to sign, that's not true either.
No, I'm talking about that shit's all done. Now we're on the field. Like if you transition now into September 13th, the Commanders are in town, games in play, Sirianni's on the headset. Who's he listening to? Or is he just listening to what's being called? And Mannion's firing the bullets, and they're either working or not. What's happening there? Is Nick weighing in? Is Nick consuming information? Is Nick saying, "Hey, I don't think that's a good play to call"? What's the dynamic there with Sirianni as the head coach? I think I know what the dynamic is with a guy like Andy Reid. He's making the fucking decisions on the phone. He's making the decisions on the headset.
Well, that's, and that's, again, that's, Andy many times has given up play calling and people don't even know it. He's given it up to Doug Peterson. He's given it up to Eric Bieniemy. He's given it up to Matt Nagy, for a half, for a quarter, for a preseason game, for whatever. At times he stepped back, at times he doesn't step back. And, for the vast majority of the time, certainly here, he was the play caller. He's become more malleable about it in Kansas City. The head coach is in charge. So if he doesn't like what's going on, and Nick has said it multiple times, and you'll hear him say it again, everything on that field has my name on it. Everything, he's responsible for everything on that field. So to his credit, if you want to blame somebody, blame him first. Because if it's not going the way that it should be going, it's his responsibility to make sure it is. And that includes Vic. But obviously, Vic, you're not going to do much better than Vic Fangio, to be blunt. And they know that. Offensively, yeah, it's more open-ended. If you go back to 2024, Kellen was on board, but and those changes came from Nick. A lot of people say the offensive line, they had a meeting with the offensive line, but it's not like Lane Johnson when we're going to do this. It's wild, the things that people run with. Nick basically said, this isn't working. Let's lean on what we do well. And that one worked. And last year he did the same thing. He said, this isn't working. That's when you saw them go under center more and do more of the wide zone stuff and the stretch stuff because of how badly the running game was struggling. And that's where the disconnect with Stoutland started. Nick put his foot down, said, this is not, again, right, wrong, or indifferent.
Yeah, he's got to make the call. He's got to make the decision and live with
exactly.
the decision. Go ahead, finish up.
Yeah, if Sean Mannion's overwhelmed, yeah, he's going to step in. He's going to try to help him. And that's why Josh Grizzard is here, and that's why Jared Johnson's here, and Parks Frazier has a little bit of experience with play calling. Everybody's there to help everybody, but yeah, he's in charge.
John, does it ever happen? The play comes in, Jalen goes in the huddle and says, yo, AJ, go get fucking open so we can get the first down.
Happened twice in big time situations.
I'm not running this play. Go get open.
Happened in two very high publicized situations. Seattle, 2023, lost the game on an interception. They went off script. Green Bay last year, they went off script at the end of the game. They persevered. Didn't work either time. And they went rogue, so to speak. In the Green Bay, they managed, they could have just run out the clock, and they just basically, and instead they tried to go for the kill shot, and it wasn't even close. Same thing in Seattle. They ran a go route, interception by, I believe, Julian Love. So it's happened. It doesn't happen often. But yeah, it has happened. And, Nick looked like a fool basically defending them. So, people can, he got a lot of bad publicity for his explanation of the Seattle play. And then AJ came out and admitted it was they went off script. But, so a lot of people say, the coach is protecting his players, but some people like that. Some people don't like that. I'd prefer honesty, but he will protect his players. But yeah, they've done it. He's done it. This last year there was a wheel route to Saquon Barkley that's, I shouldn't say off script because all of it's, on, things they've done in the past, but the quarterback has some autonomy, and sometimes it's a good thing. But back in the old days, I mean, in the 70s, the Bradshaw, the Staubach, the Stabler, the Tarkenton, those guys called their own plays on the field. In a lot of ways, if you get a feel for the game and you have a smart quarterback, it could really elevate you. But that's not what the game is today. And it really starts at it's being micromanaged by guys who aren't on the field.
That's a good word. It's being really micromanaged.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, but if you have a Peyton Manning, you should give them a lot of rope. But there aren't a lot of those styles of quarterbacks because they're not taught that way anymore. So It's difficult to become that.
All right, good stuff today, Johnny Mac. Thanks to everyone from JAKIB Nation for being here on what is a football Thursday.
Thursday feels like a Friday.
Yeah, it does, I guess. No live show tomorrow. We'll have some clips up tomorrow. Populating on the channel. No Birds 365 on Monday. Cilio, by the way, was so excited when I told him that there was no show on Friday and Monday that he went on the air and he tried to claim Thursday. Thursday
as well.
Thursday as well. He lost. He blamed it on CTE. But I am glad that we will pause for the 4th of July. Enjoy all of the celebration that goes with feeling good about being in this country. And as Johnny Mac said earlier when we first came on, do hydrate when the temperatures.
Yes, it is already awfully humid. Yeah, taking the dog out today, it's just
hydration, John, is key. I don't know if I said this yesterday, but I told my wife the other day, for the first time ever in my life, I actually almost went down.
Oh boy.
And only because
no hydration.
I had a hot tea. I had a throat coat. My throat was struggling. I had a coffee, and I didn't drink my huge bottle of water it's the minute I get up, I drink. And I forgot to do it, and I didn't do it. And for the first time ever, when I say almost went down, I'm telling you, John, for the first time, I almost felt like I almost went through the process of understanding what it was like to faint. That's never happened to me. Drink water when you first get up. You know what I mean?
Luckily. And you asked my preparation. That's more of my preparation now that I've gotten older for training camp. I almost, the walks become longer. The hydration becomes more of an emphasis because I've been lucky enough to not faint to date. And I don't want to do it at
Johnny, will do, Riz. I got 35 more years to go, brother. I mean, I got a long time left.
Yeah, I don't know how long I have, but I don't want to,
that's my plan, man. I got to be around for all the grandkids.
Yeah.
My daughter has 3. My son Joseph has 1. He's God willing, he's blessed with 3 more. That's 4. That gives me 7. Zander and Emily, my prediction is minimum 4, assuming
minimum 4?
Assuming we're blessed by the good Lord. That puts me at 11.
Wow.
Kateri and Isabel, 4-4, if God willing, and that gives me an incredible blessing of 19 grandkids, which requires the responsibility of me to make sure I'm here for everyone. That's my motivation, Johnny Mac.
All right. I think my motivation would be to get some rest if there were 19.
Yeah. Woo. All right. That's going to do it for this edition of Birds 3.
Hey, real quick before I leave, Jalen Brown, the Sixers made a good move. Don't believe the analytics nerds. Sixers made a good move.
John, in all of the moves that I've watched the Sixers make, when I saw that trade, I was excited about him as a 76er.
Yeah, you should be. I mean, long-suffering Sixers fan should be. I mean, you almost wait for the other shoe to drop with that team. They've made so many bad decisions, so many bad organizational decisions over the years. Yeah, I'm with you. It came from Shams bomb. And I had to look at it like 4 times to say, is this real?
Well, the only
you have all these trolls, and I had to double check it and make sure. Contacted my Sixers guy, and he said, no, it's real.
Well, the only next one, the next roster ad will be LeBron. And whether you like him or not, LeBron wants to go where the possibility exists that he can win one more time.
Yeah, I'll believe that when I see it. And I like LeBron from my days, my short stint covering the NBA, but always thought he was, for as famous he is, I thought he was well-grounded. I know a lot of people disagree with me, but I don't believe he's coming here. I think he's going to Golden State, but it would be fun if he did.
Oh, boy, it'd be fun. Yeah, no doubt. All right, Johnny Mac, good stuff today, brother. JAKIB Nation, I love you, man. Appreciate everybody being here. We made it to the end of this week. We'll see everybody back here on Tuesday. It'll be Zander, Krause, and John McMullen with the kickoff of the countdown. By the way, Johnny Mac, real quick, and I know we're over. Who's the latest release today in your list? So it's
that's a good question. I don't know if it's up yet, but
is it posted yet?
Because it's not my responsibility today, but I will tell you who exactly it is. So we're up to number 22. It's the exciting, and by the way, deservedly so, because he had a great season last year. It's the punter, Braden Mann.
All right, good stuff. And John, did you watch? Wait a minute, let me get this up here. Did you watch? Thank you, Thank you, JD. I appreciate that more than you know, man. Good stuff. Did you watch the Fangio podcast with Cooper?
No, I saw he's going to be on it. I only saw the clip.
Yeah,
I think it's coming out today.
Yeah. should be a good match. I'm going to end the show with JD's point up there. Well done. That's going to do it for Birds 365. Johnny Mac, great stuff, man. Have a great Independence Day, a good holiday, and we'll catch up with you on the other side.
Yeah, enjoy the holiday. Stay hydrated. Go USA and go Sixers.
All right, good stuff, brother. See you next time, everyone.
Imagine for a moment that you went to work today and when you came home, you were catastrophically injured. Your life and your family's life. That's what happened to union construction worker Mike Little.
I was scared of what the end was going to be, but to be 100% honest with you, I knew I was going to be all right just by talking with Brian. In my heart, I just knew everything was going to be all right.
Call the firm and find out why they say, "We got this." Call 215-458-2222.